going to create a new slide. I have something typed out. Here's the thing that I have is suggested rules for protocols of interaction. So here's my mind automatically went to, if people are caught, they're taken captive by the devil at his will in this egregore or in any of these egregores of ideology, like Calvinism, provisionism. So what can we do to try to reach people? And I thought one of the things that Jordan Hall brought up in concepts of new governance was, what are going to be the protocols for interaction? Like when computers talk to each other, there's protocols of interaction. So right. What protocols do we have? What could we have protocols of interaction that prevent sophistry and the transmission, propagation of ideological possession? You see? That kind of thing. So if we could get people to get like a Calvinist to agree, so I'm gonna put these up on the screen, and these are kind of off the top of my head, so we could supplement these. And these are also, I got some ideas from dealing both with Calvinists and from dealing with people who have cluster B personality disorders. So before engaging with a Calvinist, so instead of debating a Calvinist, get them to agree to these things, like rule omega. And that is, you don't punish people for having said something poorly or crudely or in a cringeworthy way, but you help them try to birth out the thing that's trying to be said in good faith, kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt. And then you're going to clearly define terminology. And what I could add on to this is what I'm looking for is a prophylaxis against, I don't know how to spell, against equivocation. Because right. When you're optimizing toward, how do you spell prophylaxis?
I'm just as bad at spelling as you.
Okay. It's a preventative against equivocation, because when you talk to somebody who's doing sophistry, which is all Calvinism can do, everything is equivocation. It's all word games. So let's define sovereignty, for example, before we start. Let's define what a work is before we start. Let's define faith before we start.
Yeah.
You know? It's kind of like Jordan Peterson asking, well, it depends what you mean by the word believe. Right. And what you mean by you. I mean, it seems like simple questions, but those are great questions.
Yeah.
Clearly state your objectives. And that ties into this one, which is, don't have the objective of trying to steer the conversation toward a pre-aligned ideology. Like I'm trying to convince this person of absolute determinism. You're not allowed to do that. Not allowed to convince, not allowed to go into a conversation with a pre-held goal of where I want to get them. Rather, I'm actually anticipating learning from them.
Yeah. I wonder what that means in terms of evangelism, like what that means in like the effectiveness of meaningfully converting somebody in a, like, because when you think of the common Christian trope of evangelizing, like you're going to go out with a pre-scripted ideological set list of how to convert somebody by reading.
It's a formula.
Yeah, like a formula.
The Romans Road formula.
Yeah, and it's it puts a big question into that. And one of the things that I find with when I watch like a Jordan Peterson video or any video or any interaction with somebody who is a master of dialogue or a master of navigating through human language and human intentionality.
Yeah.
I see them not yielding to expedient information exchange, which equivocation is one of them.
Great way to say that. Or sloganeering, yeah.
So when I hear really wise people or people that I consider to be wise and thoughtful, when I hear them interact with others, I hear them or I see them getting the person to slow down their language, which is to slow down their information exchange by saying something like, hey, hold on, let's talk about what you mean by sovereignty, because I don't know what that is. I don't know what you mean by
Yeah,
that.
what do you mean by that? And also tell me, if a person were reading the Bible from scratch and had no theological training, at what point in reading the Bible would they come across a reason to start defending the idea of sovereignty?
Right. So that would be a great question in that line of thought. And so what I see happening when, because I tend to do this a lot, I tend to be very long-winded in conversation, and kind of insufferable sometimes when I'm in a conversation that I feel like might be going sideways, because I don't want to yield to that expedient sophistry, where somebody just talks very quickly and emotionally and intuitively,
Yeah.
not reflexively actually paying attention to what they're saying, and therefore have no idea what they really mean. So what I see happening in like a Jordan Peterson video is he'll get somebody to slow down and consider what they even think they're asking him. And what I see is the person with the bad intentions getting very frustrated because the conversation
Yep.
is not getting to that destination where they get to hammer their punchline of, well,
Right.
the ideological punchline.
The floor is being taken out from underneath them.
Right. And so I think you see that a lot in the Platonic dialogues, is that, Socrates is spending so much time like breaking down, or like allowing the dialogue to actually bake, which makes the food much more rich, much more tasteful, rather than just going to McDonald's getting fast food. You know what I'm saying? I see him slowing the conversation down. He doesn't allow Gorgias or, the sophists to just basically go, point A, point B, point C, boom, you're, I gotcha.
Yeah, you're not going to have
know?
a syllogistic takedown.
Yeah, yeah. So I see one way of preventing the propagation of ideological thinking or of the egregore, like you're saying. One technique being slowing down the person's speech and getting them to clarify. It's just that when you put that set of demands on the person, they will often probably get very frustrated with you. I've experienced that a lot, is they get very frustrated, and try and, like provoke you to start speaking in a expedient way like they are, or an emotional way like they are, or an intuitive way like they
Yeah,
are.
they want to get you. Yeah. So the intuitive part is very interesting too, because this kind of thing feeds into the intuitions,
Yeah,
and the ideology with which you align yourself starts to shape your intuitive sense of knowing, to
right.
the point where when you start questioning things and going back to first principles thinking,
Yes.
an ideological person will look at you like you're
Yes.
crazy.
Yeah,
Oh, don't you know anything? Well, yeah,
yeah.
I'm aware of all the things.
Yeah, they'll try and use the expedient language flow to hijack your moral intuitions. You
Yes,
see,
that's
where
a
if you can
great way to say
slow
that.
the conversation down, you won't fall susceptible to, sanctity and degradation, or any of Jonathan Haidt's moral
Yeah, the moral
intuitions. You're
foundation. Yeah,
less susceptible to it because you're more reflexively um like paying attention to what you're saying and what's being said by the other person. So you're allowing for a greater bandwidth of time to kind of absorb maybe what's really being said here, you
yes,
know?
yes. Um, Another, to continue down that list, would be to clearly state objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And I put this phrase in here: slow down, like from what you were saying, slow down the speech and get them to clarify.
Yeah, I
Clearly
like
state
that.
objectives. Avoid moralistic reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
Do not assign motives to the interlocutor. You just want to elevate yourself above the word of God. You just can't stand for something to be more authoritative than you, or you hate this or something. I had to have a discussion with money a little bit about with my ex, and she says, I know you're bitter about paying child support. Well, that kind of thing, that kind of ideological thing where you assign some kind of emotion or motive to somebody else as the reason for why they're saying or doing something, has
Yeah.
no place in a good faith dialogue.
A lot of the times, like assertions like that end up being just projections, actually. You
Yes,
know?
their projection. Exactly. That's exactly right. So then do not assign dispositions to the interlocutor. And now, there's a lot of thou shalt nots in here, Um, do not presume hatred, likes, and some of these kind of overlap.
Yeah.
Hatred, likes, dislikes, whatever are catalyzing your interlocutor. You just hate the word of God, which is a mix of presuming a disposition and moralistic reasoning. Do not presume a moral inferiority of your interlocutor. Well, if you weren't so totally depraved, you would understand Calvinism. Do not steer the conversation toward a pre-aligned ideology. This is just off the top of my head, but something like, and we could, have a project to expound on this or to simplify it, maybe. Something simple to where if we're going to have a dialogue with somebody, get them to agree to these things, and then maybe, like, if we're going to do not really a debate but a topical discussion with a Calvinist online, have a third person who's like the referee for when one of these are broken.
I was just playing in my mind as you were saying that. It's like if you could get somebody like JD Martin, because I think JD Martin is actually pretty open to at least initiating conversation.
Right.
I think he is, but it would be kind of cool to see if he would yield to like a set of parameters or constraints like this,
Yeah.
and it'd be open to see like what he might say under these constraints. You know what
Like,
I'm saying?
okay, so another thing you could do is take those parameters and go through a James White debate and cross out everything that violates one of those and see what's left.
Yeah.